Everybody can hear me? Yes. That's good. I just want to introduce, with a little history, to say that in our lifetime, most of the people who live here, who are here today, have seen more upheavals than perhaps since the destruction of the temple 2,000 years ago. And this upheaval expressed itself in the destruction of 6 million Jews and the desecration of the European Jewish community. What is now left of the Jewish community there are remnants and survivors, those who heroically struggled to rebuild their lives. And this upheaval has hit all of us in one degree or another. This is part of my story and how this upheaval affected my life. I was born in Berlin in 1927. In 1933, I had a very nice, protected, wonderful childhood in an Orthodox, frum family. We lived near the shul. My father was a Baal Korah. My uncle was a Baal Tekiah and the Gabbai. So being part of the community was natural to me as I was growing up. And by the time I was 6 years old in 1933, it was time for me to go to school. And also, it was the year when Hitler came to power. It did not affect me at all because I was very little and I didn't know enough. And I went to school. My father would walk me to school, but as I got older, on the way to school, I had to be careful, and I would sometimes hide in doorways to avoid having to do the Heil Hitler salute when they were marching by. Also, as I got older, and the Hitler Youth knew where you were going. I went to a Jewish girls' school of the Jewish community, and if they saw Jewish kids walking to school, they would try and throw stones. So throwing stones here is nothing really new to me. I just want to know, how much time do we have?
About 40 minutes. About 40 minutes.
Okay, no, because, I have to time myself. So life went on pretty well. My father had a store, which in 1933, he had to give up and close. It was knitwear and underwear, things like that. And because he was not allowed to have a shop anymore, he had to go traveling. And he traveled throughout the marketplaces in the country. My mother would sometimes go with him. Now, my mother was one of 9 siblings, and all living in Poland. My parents were both born in Poland, but they were married in Berlin. And my brother and I were born in Berlin. I have one brother by the name of Eli, who's 3.5 years older than me. He passed away about 8 years ago. And we grew up together, as I said, in this wonderful sviva and this wonderful community. He was going to the OUisrael school in the Tiergarten, and being older than me, I would sometimes tag along with his outings where he went along. I'm going to move ahead to 1938. There was what is called the TORAH, where the Nazis decided they do not want any more Polish citizens in their country, and they were going to push them all back to Poland. I'm sorry, I have a terrible problem with the light here, so I'm going to put on my glasses, my sunglasses, okay? Okay, I don't know how that. Oh, that's better. Okay. The Kristallnacht was taking place at the end of October, October 27th to be exact, in 1938. Now, my father, as I mentioned to you, was at that point traveling with business, and he would be away for a few days during the week, but always home for Shabbat. And in the middle of the night, I heard a banging on the door, knock on the door. I jumped up because I thought for sure that my mother had forgotten to leave the latch open and he couldn't get in from his travels. So I jumped up, opened the latch, and opened the door, and I'm faced with 3 black shirts Nazis standing there, asking, is David Fachler at home? So as a automatic reaction, I said, mein Papa ist nicht zu Hause, my father is not at home. And as I turned around and saw his hat on the shelf, I thought I was really in trouble because I was telling a lie, and that would be terrible. Meantime, my parents, of course, had heard the knocking, and they got up, and they told my father to come with them. So he took with him what he could, his talit and tefillin, of course, and my mother perhaps prepared something for him. I'm not sure, but he said, don't worry, I'll be back soon, and, we'll be fine. My brother, very luckily, was sleeping in a back bedroom. He didn't hear anything, because the list that they had prepared to pick up all the people included men and boys over the age of 15. My brother turned 15 that day, on the 27th of October, was his birthday, so he was not on a list, which tells us that obviously all these things were prepared way ahead of time. It was all well organized in a good German way. When my brother did get up, he wanted to go to school, and my mother stopped him. You don't go. It's too dangerous. And he stayed. He went to my uncle and aunt, whom I'm going to talk about in a moment, and stayed there because that was a safer place. Later on, he did go to school, and sure enough, he found out that a lot of his friends had been picked up, although they were perhaps not on the list, but they were 15 already, and they were also taken. Now, my uncle and aunt, my aunt Gershon and my aunt Miriam, they lived around the corner from us, also by the name of Fachler, which is my maiden name. And they came originally from Poland, but they went first to Ottoman Palestine around early part of the 1900s, I guess after they were married, and they were going to probably live here in Jaffa. However, after some time, they decided to move to Berlin. While they were here, they took out Turkish citizenship from the Ottoman Empire, which was a very lucky thing for them, because this way they were not Polish, and for sure not German. And that is the reason why it was a good idea for my brother to go to their house, because they wouldn't be searched. Meantime, we are home with my mother. My mother, as I mentioned, she was one of 9 siblings, and we all usually had 1 or 2 of her siblings staying with us. We had one uncle, Theo, who actually lived in Berlin, not with us, but near us. And my uncle Gershon, who had the Turkish citizenship, he had 4 sons and 1 daughter. The oldest son was a lawyer. The other sons worked in furniture business with him. The youngest one was Judith, and she married my mother's brother. Are you with me? That means she became my aunt after she was my cousin. Okay? Okay. I'm just giving you a quick picture of the sviva, of the family that I was surrounded with. Now, this Uncle Gershon and Tante Miriam, they were older than my parents. So to me, it was surrogate grandparents, because all my grandparents were in Poland, mostly in Lodz. All my uncles and aunts were in Poland. All my cousins were in Poland. This is the only family that we had in Berlin where we lived. So we were very close. We would go there, Kiddush after Shabbat. We went to their sukkah on Sukkot. And as I said, my uncle was a shofar blower, and it was the kind of atmosphere that I grew up in. Very, very happily a little girl and spoiled for everybody. I was the youngest. Nobody else had young kids like I was. Now being without my father, my mother began to look and see what could we do to get out of Germany without having to go back to Poland. And she visited various consulates. I would go with her because I didn't have school much anymore. And we visited consulates, and we went here and there. And Uruguay, Paraguay, Siam, and for me it was good to learn geography, but visas we didn't get. Nobody wanted us. Now, you will know that less than a month later, on November the 9th, was Kristallnacht. I'm talking from October 27th to November 9th, which is a very short period of time. Now, we lived in an apartment block, which is a U shape, like a chet. And in the back of it was our shul. Some buildings had factories. We had our shul right there. We could see from our window. We were on the first floor, straight onto the shul. So when they came in the middle of the night of November 9th to 10th, we had to have blackout already on the windows, blankets, but we could look through and saw everything that they were doing to our shul. They were throwing out the Svarim, the Sifrei Torah. They were even putting up benches and throwing those out into the yard. And we stood there, my mother, my brother, and I, watching, and we heard them yelling and shouting. And finally we heard one say to the other, "I think there's still Jews living up there." And we thought for sure they would come to hurt us, but they didn't. Luckily, they did not. It was a terrible night, and it was a terrible day with the Kristallnacht. My uncle Gershon had a beautiful furniture store on a beautiful street called the Chestnut Boulevard, Kristallnacht Allee. In Israel, we don't have chestnut trees. Chestnut trees are special. They're very beautiful. And when they bloom, it's like candles coming up out of the trees. I was asked to go to the shop and to go to the street and to watch and see that maybe the employees are not going to stealing anything. I was 10 years old, and I did what I was told, which seems a bit strange now. I went there, and I stood and I watched. I don't know the employees, but the people were looting and taking what they wanted, and I guess having a good time with what they're doing and they're looting. And there were a couple of women, and I had pigtails, light hair, blue eyes, and I, didn't look like a Jewish at all. And the two women were standing there, and I heard one say to the other, "I think that's a Jewish child." So when I heard that, I turned around and I went home. On the same day, my Tante Peppy, who lived with us, she was engaged to a man by the name of Uncle Herman, and he also had a furniture shop, and it's not such a big one. He was tall and thin with a long face and looked really, I could say, Goyish, okay, Aryan. So he went to see what was happening to his store, to his shop. And when he got there, he looked and he stood back, but somebody recognized him, and with the red paint that they were painting the big J, Jude, on the storefront, they painted his face. He came home to us, and I remember very clearly that my mother and my Aunt Peppy tried to get that red paint off his face. These are very vivid memories of Kristallnacht. After Kristallnacht, there was no more school. So wherever my mother went, I went with her. There was a time when she had to go to court for I don't know what, but I remember the judge said, they still have some Ordnung, some laws here in Germany. Apparently he was not a Nazi, because whatever the complaint was, my mother was okay. And probably during this time also, I and my brother were registered for Kindertransport. My brother for Youth Aliyah, he was older, and I for the Kindertransport. I remember he also went on Hachshara for a couple of weeks in Germany to prepare for his Youth Aliyah Kindertransport. Resha Freyer was in charge of that. If you've heard her name, there's a Kika Resha Freyer not too far from here. And she did some tremendous work. My father was able to come back about 6 months later. That was before Pesach in 1939. And he was allowed to come back just to be allowed to give up his business, which is a bit of a joke because there was no more business to give up. I can't do it, sorry. Sorry, it's the light that's very difficult. So he came back, and my brother's papers came through for England, and had to prepare my brother with all his, that he was allowed to take with him. And left Germany in May 1939. So that left me, and I didn't have my Kindertransport papers yet. And my parents prepared to leave and go to Poland. There was nowhere else to go. Nobody would have us. We were not invited to go anywhere else. And I was going to go with them because I didn't have any documents yet to go on the Kindertransport. We have a big family in Poland, as I mentioned before. So for me, this was a nice holiday, a nice vacation, because I was going to meet all my grandparents and my aunts and uncles and cousins and so on. But it didn't go so smoothly. My parents picked up. Do you have an echo here? Yeah. My parents packed up, put things to the shipper, and wanted to send everything, what they hadn't been able to sell or what they wanted to keep, was sent to Poland. Now, my mother also prepared for me an edunia, a trousseau, to be sent to England. In other words, she is trying to take care of me even at the age of 12 to make sure that I would have, not knowing what the future would be in store. I'd like to know what happened here to the sound, because I have a terrible echo in my head. Do you hear it? You can hear me? You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Very well.
Okay, fine. So we prepared to leave. This was going toward the end of June 1939. I went with my parents to Poland. We went to Lodz. My father's parents lived there. My mother's mother lived a little further in. She was a widow. My brother is named after this grandfather who died young. And I had a very nice time going around and meeting everybody and being spoiled by everybody. And I remember it as a lovely holiday. And waiting all the time, waiting for my papers to come through for the Kindertransport. Well, eventually they did. In the meantime, we traveled through Poland to the other couple of other towns where we had a lot of relatives. And they came, and since our lift hadn't come yet from Berlin, my mother, who was a master dressmaker in her own right, she sewed some more clothes for me, and I was allowed a small suitcase with a few things, and it was time for me to leave. I left on the 30th of July, which was my father's 40th birthday. On the same time, my Tante Peppy, who lived with us for some years in Berlin, who I was very close with, gave birth to a little girl, and I was very much wanting to see this new baby, and I was very upset that there was no time for me to do that. And I just wasn't, they couldn't take me to see the new baby. I was very upset, I remember that. And so we went to the train in Lodz. First of all, my father was told I would have to go to Warsaw to get the papers, but eventually he managed to get the papers to us, to where we were in Lodz, and I was able to leave from Lodz to Berlin. My parents took me to this train station and put me on the train. My father walked into the compartment with me, and there was a gentleman sitting there, and he said to him, "Will you take care of my daughter till we get to Berlin?" "Sure," he said, but I don't know what happened. I don't remember seeing him again, but I was fine. My mother did not come into the train with me. She walked down the platform, and you have to think that she had done that a few months earlier for my brother, to let him go, and now she had to let me go. And as I got older and became a mother, I realized the terrible, terrible difficulty for a parent must have been. I will just tell you that I spoke to somebody close to me, some years ago, and when I told the story, she said, "I would never let my children go." I said, "Really? You wouldn't let them go to save them?" So I always thought back that what a really thoughtless, silly thing to say. So people who let their children go did the right thing. July 30th was the last time I saw my parents. Yes, we will see each other again soon, we will be together and so on, but the fact was that we never saw each other again. I arrived in Berlin, and it so happened that the day that I arrived in Berlin, I had just missed one Kindertransport to England, so I had to wait 10 days in Berlin. Berlin was familiar to me. I mean, I grew up there, knew this, so I knew more. I must have been guided to where I was to go. It was an orphanage, a Jewish orphanage where I could stay the 10 days. It was run by a wonderful couple who were deaf mutes, but they had normal children, and there were kids there. I don't remember too much of who was there, but I know that I managed. I took care of myself. And also I had to go to the shipper to tell them that our goods had not arrived and where are they and so on. So I did that. My father asked me to. And he said he sent them. Apparently he did, because later I did have some correspondence that they arrived, but I never got mine at Dunya. Never. I'm still waiting for it, yeah. Okay, so the 10 days in Berlin somehow went over, and it was time for me to get to the train station that would take me to England. I went, and there were lots and lots of other children. I don't have the numbers, but there were lots of other children, none of whom I knew. I was still alone. I didn't know anybody, but we were all taken care of because there were people there from the committee. When I say committee, I'm never sure which committee it was, because there were several. And we got onto the train, and so did the Nazis. And they went through our luggage. And if there was a piece of jewelry, they would take it. If you had more than 10 marks, they would confiscate it and take it. You were only allowed 10 marks. I had a friend who once came to join me here in Yerushalayim for the Kristallnacht commemoration that we used to have in the Chovevei Shul. Some of you may remember that. And she still had on her neck a mark, a scar, of when the Nazis tore her necklace off her neck on the train to England. So it was very scary until we got to the Dutch border. The Nazis left, and some wonderful people, ladies came onto the train to bring us hot cocoa, chocolate, goodies, and it was like going literally from hell to heaven. It was such a wonderful feeling to be smiled at and to be talked to nicely and so on. So that was the rest of the train journey until we got to the Hook of Holland, where we had to board a ship, a boat, and cross the English Channel. Now, the English Channel is a very choppy water, and we got onto the boat, and we had bunks, we had places to stay. It was big enough, but it was also very stormy and choppy, and quite a few of the children were sick and throwing up, and I don't remember exactly, but we finally crossed the channel and got to Harwich and the south of England, the port city. And there again, we had to take a train to London. All this traveling was bringing us obviously to where we needed to go. We got on the train and we were taken to London to a hostel on Willesden Lane. It's called the Willesden Lane Hostel. There were already many children there, and we joined them, and we were well taken care of. I remember that for breakfast the next morning was the first time I ever ate cornflakes. I never knew about cornflakes before. And all the meals were actually dairy. They were halavi, and there was no problem with food at all. So this was 10 days before war broke out. So we were there about a week, and the second Shabbat, on Friday night, the people in charge, the matron, I don't quite know what you call her, came around and said, everybody has to sign for school. Friday night on Shabbos. So I said, I can't do this. I never write on Shabbos. I can't. Why do I have to sign? What is it? Yes, because you're registered with the school and you have to sign for it, and you're going to be taken out of London into the countryside on Sunday, and we have to prepare. You have to who's coming and the names and the signatures and everything. Well, they kept at it, of course, and I will say honestly that to this day, I do not remember whether I signed or not. I sort of blanked it out, so I don't know if I did it or not. But on Sunday morning, we were lined up and got onto buses and taken to a little town in Hertfordshire named Hemel Hempstead. And there, yeah, I like when people nod as I talk. Yes, very good. Yeah. And there, we were taken to a big, some kind of an auditorium or a hall, maybe a school hall, I'm not sure what it was. And the local people who lived there, the citizens, were waiting there for the children because they had volunteered to take them home with them and keep them safe and clothed and fed for the time being. Time being, the war was imminent, but it wasn't yet. It was the 1st of September. And if you remember, the war broke out on the 3rd of September, 2 days later. But of course, it was the right thing to get the children out of London and save the children. So I call this whole process Pick a Kid. And there I was picked together with another little girl by the name of Inga, by a nice lady named Mrs. Overhead, Alice Overhead, and she took us home, and we were to call her Auntie Alice, and her husband was Uncle Bert. His name was Bert. And so there we were. We had a nice little bedroom upstairs for the two of us. They had two sons. One was already an officer in the Royal Navy. The other one was a 16-year-old who didn't take so well to these two Jewish girls from Germany coming in. And he would call us names like German cow and things that wasn't nice, but she stopped it, I guess. And eventually, a year or two later, he also joined the army. So we lived in Hemel Hempstead, and there were quite a group of us refugee children who came to the same little town, and we went to the same school, and we had to learn English pretty quickly. We were not allowed to talk German, so for children, as you know, it doesn't take long. We talked German to each other in our own little room and so on, but otherwise we didn't. And my brother, meantime, was in Scotland. This whole group of youth Aliyah had been taken to Scotland, to a place, Whittingham, not far from Edinburgh, I guess, and they were billeted in Lord Balfour's castle, the same Lord Balfour of the famous Balfour Declaration. They lived in Lord Balfour's castle and stayed there for quite a while. We were corresponding. My father wrote to me already in England. When I wrote home and was still writing in German. And one of his letters, he said, I hope we will get a chance to meet these kind people who took you in and who are taking care of you, and to thank them properly for what they do for you. And be careful, don't drink unboiled water, and don't eat raw apples, and learn as much as you can, because whatever you learn now will be good when you grow older. And be good and do some exercises. This is all the back of me on the book is one of my father's letters in German. You won't be able to read it, but it's there. And the front, and the back also has some. Moshe Kapoya. All right. So there I was in Hemel Hempstead. There was organized some kind of a cheder in the afternoon, some kind of a Hebrew school, for a while anyway. And I carried on and ate only dairy food. I didn't want to eat any treif food, of course, until the chief rabbi, Hertz of England, came out with a psak that the children need to eat meat. They're growing up, they need the protein, the vitamins, whatever it is, and they need to eat meat. I did not listen to that for quite a long time, but my friend Inga, who lived with me, she had a grandmother in London, and her grandmother told her that you must eat the meat. So she started to eat it, and I didn't. And then Auntie Alice said that she told her, tell Miriam to eat because I'm already cooking anything with lard anyway, so she might as well eat the meat. Well, it was a lot of pressure. She was cooking treif anyway. And so I had to start eating the meat, for my own good health, so to speak. That's what they told me. It was another crisis, if you like the Friday night signature. These are the things that, that really stick out in my mind. Where am I? The time went on, we went to school. It won't be surprising to tell you that the refugee children did very well in school. They outshone the local kids, the London kids. They learned better, they picked up better, and we had some very, very nice, kind teachers who were spending time with us and who were trying to help us with the language and to get along. We had a nice group of young people, of refugee kids. One of them came, very smart boy, professor of mathematics here in Israel, lived in Netanya, and he and his wife came to one of my Kristallnacht programs also, or Yom HaShoah programs that we had annually here. It was interesting to meet up after all those years, after being children and becoming grown-ups again. The time went on, and I was writing to my brother regularly. He was not such a regular correspondent, so I know that most of the letters that I wrote, I would say to him, "Why don't you write more? Why don't you tell me more?" I will tell you that he died about 8 years ago, I think, 9 years ago. And when he died, my nephew Yankee, who's a writer also, he gave me a big envelope of 5 years of letters that I had written to my brother. I have them at home, and they've all been photographed and put into the archives in Yad Vashem. So 5 years of letters is a very good material for another story, but I'm not ready for it yet. Also, parents letters from my parents were sent to. First of all, we wrote to Belgium. The Fachlers who lived in Berlin had Turkish passports, were able to get themselves into Belgium right at the very end of 1938, beginning 39. And they lived in Antwerp. And we wrote to them. They sent the letters on to Lodz, to Poland. My father wrote from Poland, sent to Belgium, and Belgium sent it to us in England. So you see how at that time, there were letter writing was a good thing to do, not like today. And we had correspondence up until the time when Belgium was overrun by the Nazis, and the correspondence stopped. They couldn't write anymore from Belgium to Poland or vice versa. So I have just Red Cross letters we were allowed to use, 25 words or less, including the address. And I have still copy in my possession the last Red Cross letter, which was marked undeliverable. So we had no idea what was happening to our parents. Living in England, it was, we were all concerned with the British war effort. We did not think so much about what was happening in Europe, and we certainly got no information. We got no news whatsoever. So it was, your life went on, you were busy and you were trying to do whatever you could without knowing at all what was going on. I was staying in Hemel Hempstead with my foster family for 5 years. My brother was 2 years in Scotland, and then he left to begin a little kibbutz in a place named Hardmead. He was able to come and visit me before that. We hadn't seen each other in 2 years. And when he came to visit me, he said, "Do you have any photographs?" I said, "Yes, I was a photograph saver, I think since the day I was born. I had family photographs in my school satchel. I would go back and forth to school with my photograph. I didn't go anywhere without my photographs. So I had these wonderful photographs of our parents, whatever I could catch from the relatives, whoever was, I had the photographs in my hot little hands all the time." So he said, "Give them to me for safekeeping. You know, I'm here, I'm not far now, give them to me." So I said, "Okay." I gave him all my photos, and he went back. He went into his little kibbutz Hardmead, where they didn't really have proper housing yet. They were kind of huts, and his roommate did not watch the Shabbat candles, and the whole thing caught fire and burned down together with all my photographs. So I lost the photographs of my parents and other relatives. What I have now, and what, if you take the book, what you'll see in the book are photographs that I was able to get from the relatives in Belgium, those who were still left, and copy and have for myself. I'm sorry, I will not be able to hear you. I have an echo in my head. You please wait till I'm finished. Yeah, sorry. Okay. So during that time, my sister-in-law, my brother's wife, came also to Hardmead with a young group of Bnei Akiva kids that she was taking care of. She was a madrika, and she met my brother. And they began a friendship. And the friendship blossomed, and eventually from the small kibbutz in Hardmead, they went to a larger kibbutz in Buckingham. And there I spent my third Pesach in the kibbutz Buckingham. By the time I was 15. The first Pesach was back in the Wilson Lane hostel, and the second Pesach we made in Hemel Hempstead with koshering everything, and the third Pesach was in Buckingham. I loved it. I wanted to stay there. I did not want to go back to Hemel Hempstead to live where I was living. And we wanted to, and my brother, of course, wanted me to be there, but I was not allowed to. Too young. When I think back to say, too young, I'll grow older there. It's much better for me to grow older there than where I was. However, it didn't happen, and I wasn't able to stay there. So back I went to Hemel Hempstead. Meantime, my brother had met my sister-in-law, and she wrote in her own book that whenever they met, he always talked about his little sister and where she was and what she was doing and how unhappy he was with her. So eventually they became engaged, not formally like we do here, and she wanted to meet me. She wanted to meet the little sister, the kleine Schwester. So we arranged to meet in a midway. She lived with her parents in Letchworth, also in Hertfordshire, the same county, and I was in Hemel Hempstead. And there was a midpoint where we could each take a bus and meet at a bus stop, not knowing what the other one looked like and just hoping that it should work out. All this, of course, went by correspondence. You didn't have your iPhone and say, "Oh, I'll meet you there, I'll be there." You have to think back. I mean, It's not hard for you to think back, I'm sure. We got to the bus stop, didn't know to look, and I sneezed. A loud sneeze. I have a loud sneeze. She said, "Oh, that's a fachler sneeze. There you are." So she found me. And we had a wonderful getting together. And we talked and we talked. And she told me all about her sister and her parents and where they lived and where they came from. They came from Frankfurt am Main originally. And how happy she was to see me finally in his little sister. And they had already the wedding date, and looking forward to seeing more of me and getting to know me more and so on. And it was time to leave. And as we said goodbye, I started to cry. She said, "Why are you crying?" She said, "Did I say something to upset you? Why are you crying?" I said, "No, I'm not crying because you said something. I'm crying because what you did not say." "And what is it?" I said, "You did not say how terrible that you're eating treif, and how terrible that you're staying with the goyim, and how terrible that you're not keeping Shabbos. You didn't say any of that." So it cemented our relationship very much, as you can imagine. I'll go fast forward to Hanukkah 1944. This is already after I've been living with the overheads for 4 years. And I had left school and I had gone to work to be a good British citizen and do war work to help the war effort. And then the wedding was set for the Kibbutz Buckingham, Hanukkah 1944. And of course, I was going to go, and I did. I went to the wedding, and at that time, I met my sister-in-law's sister, Miriam, who later married the youngest son of Reb Eli Lopian. And we became very close friends for the rest of our lives. And of course, Chava's parents, the Beckers, who lived in Letchworth, and other relatives that she had. Subsequently, they invited me to come for Shabbos, for Shabbat, which I was delighted to do. So I went back home to Hemel Hempstead, and I said, I want to go there for a weekend for this. So my Auntie Alice had, look, back up a little bit. You take in children, it's getting late.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's what happens. I wanted to go for the Shabbat, and Auntie Alice said, "If you go, you won't come back." This is what I wanted to hear. This is what I wanted to hear, to finally leave and get back to my own people and to my own sviva and to what I grew up with and what I loved best. So she left my suitcase outside the door on Friday morning. She said, "If you knock on the door, I'll let you in. If not, you pick up your suitcase and you go." And that's exactly what happened. But I want you to know that what she did, Auntie Alice and Uncle Bert, to take in the children, to nurture them, to take care of them, to clothe them very nicely, and to give them very good midot. This is not to be overlooked. This is a very important thing. And you'll see at the end of the book, I talk about that as well. So I thank you very much. I'm sorry that it had to be cut short, but I was afraid this would happen. Okay.